was worshipped by Buddhists and given the title Daibosatsu, Great Bodhisattva. The guardsmen were very surprised to hear Nichiren calling on the deity in such a commanding way, so surprised indeed that they could do nothing to stop him. They continued on their way, and when they came before the Goryosha shrine, Nichiren sent a boy named Kumao to the nearby house of Shijo Kingo. Shijo Kingo and his brothers came at once. They wept at Nichiren's plight and held the reins of his horse. Nichiren admonished their tears. "I shall be beheaded tonight," he told them. "This is what I have wished for these past several years. The pheasant is killed by the hawk, the rat is killed by the cat. Many men die for the sake of their wives and their children, others die in battle. But no one yet has laid down his life in the cause of the Hokkekyo." Nichiren went on, "I'm too poor to make sufficient offerings for the souls of my parents, too poor to repay the favors I've received from my country. So tonight, by offering my head for the Hokkekyo, I shall accumulate merit. That merit I shall distribute for the repose of my parents and for the peace of my disciples and followers." The brothers accompanied Nichiren towards the beach at Katase and the place of execution. Throughout, Nichiren was resolute and chanted the sacred title. They reached Tatsuno-uchi at midnight. The moon was hidden in clouds, and only the sound of the waves disturbed the silence. Nichiren sat at the spot of execution and chanted the sacred title. Shijo Kingo prepared to kill himself immediately after the execution of his teacher. But Nichiren saw this and reminded him of a promise. "You promised not to take your own life when I'm executed. We should be glad to practice the Hokkekyo. This is a time to rejoice." Standing behind Nichiren, the executioner drew his sword. At that moment, a great gust of wind rose up, and a flash of lightning lit the sky. A great ball of light as big as the moon rose from Enoshima and flew across the sky. The execution ground was as bright as day. The lightning flashed and the thunder rolled, and suddenly everything became dark. Not a thing was visible. The executioner fainted from fear. The war minister fell from his stool. The horsemen fell to the ground, and the soldiers fled. Nichiren called out to them, "Come, do your work. If you let me live, the blame will be on you." But no one would approach him. The execution was called off. The officers sat on the ground before Nichiren, their hands joined as if in prayer. It was the morning of the 13th day. The order to kill Nichiren had actually been illegal, a product of the short temper of the war minister. The true sentence from the government was that Nichiren be exiled to Sado Island. He was taken first to Echi and the home of Honma Shigetsura, the deputy governor of Sado province. Nichiren saw the guardsmen who'd accompanied him from Kamakura as protectors. He thanked them for their service to the Hokkekyo and feasted them with drinks. His hospitality was a surprise to the guards, who had never before escorted a convict like this one. They decided to follow Nichiren and converted to the Hokkekyo. The moon that night was bright. It's considered that the moon is at its most beautiful on the 13th night of the 9th. There was a plum tree in the yard of the house. Nichiren stood by it and looked up at the moon. He called on the deity, "Moon god, you vowed to protect the practitioner of Hokkekyo in the presence of the Buddha. Why not do it now?" The people around were amazed when they saw a brilliant star come down from the sky and rest in the branch of the tree. The soldiers were frightened. Some prostrated themselves before the tree, while others ran to the back of the house. The sky grew overcast. A strong wind rose, the lightning flashed, and the thunder rolled. In Kamakura, too, a storm arose. The Shikken Hojo Tokimune consulted a fortune-teller about its meaning. He was told that unless the government released Nichiren, Japan would suffer from civil wars and foreign invasions. At once, Tokimune called a council of senior officials to decide what should be done. The priests from the other schools insisted that Nichiren should be banished. They sent men into the town to burn down the houses, and then said the fires had been started by Nichiren's followers. Many of Nichiren's followers were arrested on charges of sedition. Nichiro and Nishin were among those thrown into the dungeon under the surveillance of Yadoya Mitsunori. Nichiren heard of Nichiro's arrest and wrote to him. "It is cold tonight," he said. "I am sorry for you there in the dungeon where it must be even colder." Yadoya Mitsunori was impressed by the fact that Nichiro and the others thought only of their master, despite their own misfortunes. He converted to the Hokkekyo and took care of his former prisoners. Nichiren's exile had been suspended for almost a month whilst it was debated, but it was finally decided that the sentence should be carried out, and on the 10th day of the 10th month, Nichiren left Echi for Sado Island. It took the party 12 days to reach the port at Teradomari in the province of Echigo. The town was covered in snow. Nichiren's departure was delayed until the 27th because of the bad weather, and he stayed the while in the home of Ishikawa Uemon. The day the ship left port, the sea grew rough and heavy, and the crew had to put in for shelter at the beach of Kakuta. The following day they set sail once more, and yet again the seas grew stormy. The ship was in danger of capsizing altogether, when Nichiren took a long pole and wrote the sacred title on the surface of the waves. The sacred title remained visible on the waves, and the storm abated. So, the next day, Nichiren arrived at the port of Matsunasaki. He was taken to a cemetery called Tsukahara on the first day of the following month. Inside the cemetery, the Sanmaido Hall had been set aside for him to live in. It was a small place, old and derelict. The wind blew through it, bringing with it the snow. Even indoors, Nichiren had to wear his straw cape in order to keep warm. Sometimes the blizzards threatened to bury the hall altogether. In spite of his adversity, Nichiren was glad to have enough time to devote to the chanting of the Hokkien.